my Quilty friends, in today's video I'm going to show you how to make a feminine product pouch. Now it can fit tampons and pads and I'm really excited about it, but I'm even more excited to tell you about Lauren Waze's story, who inspired me to do this video. Lauren suffered from toxic shock syndrome from the use of tampons, and she had both her legs amputated. She's absolutely incredible and she graces the covers of magazines sharing her story. And if you don't know who she is and if you'd like to find out more, I'll put a link down below and you can find out all about her and her amazing, courageous story. So this video is dedicated to Lauren, who is trying to share her message and raise the awareness of the dangers of using menstrual products, how to use them safely, and the dangers of toxic shock syndrome. To make this pouch, you're going to need 2 pieces of fabric at 5.5 inches by 19 inches. And this is a fat quarter friendly project, so if you use 2 fat quarters you could make 3 of the pouches. Then you'll need 2 pieces of single-sided interfacing, and that needs to be cut at 5 inches by 18.5 inches, basically just half an inch smaller than our fabric. And for that I'm using Palon Shapeflex SF101. Plus you'll need a snap set and the pliers to attach them. For each of the fabrics, face it the right sides down and the wrong side facing you. Then we'll take our iron-on interfacing, and the side that's got the bumps, that's the glue, we'll face that down onto the wrong side of our fabric. And then I'm just going to try and center it. So I've got about the same amount of space around all 4 sides, because remember we cut it that half an inch smaller. And then when I'm happy, I'm going to press that, which makes it glue to our fabric. And I will just turn it over and give it a press on this side as well. Then I'll repeat that for my second piece of fabric. So now what we're going to do is place our 2 pieces right sides together. So now you can see our good sides are facing each other. And then I'm going to line up all 4 sides the best that I can. And then I'm going to pin it in each of the corners. That's how I like to do it. You can pin it however you like to. Just so that all our edges are staying in place as we sew them. And then I will just pop in a couple along the edge here and along the bottom. Now we do need to leave an opening. What we're going to do is sew all the way around but leave an opening. So if you're going to forget to do that, you could just make a little mark with a water-soluble pencil or just whatever you've got on hand, because we won't see it. I'm just going to mark it there and about here, so about a 3-4 inch opening. So I'll start here, go all the way around and then come to here and stop. So I'm going to start at that first mark that I did, and I'm going to sew with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and I'm stitching at stitch length 2.5. So I will go forward a few stitches and then do a back stitch. I like to do that because when we turn it right sides out it does tend to pull at those stitches. And as I come up to my pins I'll just remove them. And then I'm just going to do my best guess when I come to the corners at about a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So swinging around and then carrying on. So sorry, what I did there was I lifted up my foot, made sure my needle was down and turned. Coming up to my next corner, again doing my best guess at a 1/4 inch seam allowance, making sure my needle's down, lifting up my foot and turning, and then carrying on. Coming up to that second mark, coming right up to it, doing a back stitch and then cutting my thread. Okay, so I'm just going to trim any loose threads, and then on each of the corners I'm just going to cut off the excess fabric there, being careful of my stitches to not cut them, but just to lose some of that bulk for when we're turning it right sides out. So as close as I can get without accidentally cutting those corners. Okay, So now we're going to turn it right sides out. So I'm just going to find my opening, put my hand in and just grab one of the corners with my fingers and pull it through the opening. And then I'm going to put my hand in the other side and do exactly the same thing on this side. And then try to get it looking right. Now we need to get all these corners out, so I'm going to use my beautiful point turner from Modern American Vintage. And I'm just going to come into these corners and push them out gently, because if we are too firm we can accidentally poke a hole in our fabric and we don't want to do that. Okay, so I'm just doing this to all four corners, and if you want to you can even run your point turner just along those seams to get them sitting nicely and pushed out rather than rolled in, but we'll address that when we get to the ironing. Okay, now let's give that a quick press. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is just find our opening, and we're going to fold it in at about 1/4 inch on both sides and press. What we want to do is make it look like the opening was never there. So I'll just press that on one side. This bit can be a little bit fiddly. We also want to make sure there's no threads coming out of the opening. We want it to be really nice and tidy. Oh, it helps if you turn the iron on. Okay, and then what I'll do is I'll just come around to all the edges and roll out the seams and then press it so it's sitting really nice and flat. Now I use my point turner to get the seams to sit out, but if we don't, the seams can sometimes be sitting in like that, so we just want to roll them out so it's sitting really nice and flat. And it's just these little details that just makes the finish really nice and tidy. That's looking really good. So I'll just go around the whole edge and do that. My point turner has done a really nice job already. Okay, now we're going to pin and sew. So now with the fabric that you'd like to be the lining facing up and facing you, what we're going to do is we're going to fold over one edge, and then we want from the fold to the edge to be 3.5 inches. So I'm just going to take my ruler, and actually that was perfect, but let's say it was more like that. You can see that's way too short, so I just need to move that over so it measures 3.5 inches on the edge here to the fold. And then now my ruler measures 3.5 inches exactly, but maybe you've got a different ruler. I do recommend measuring it from both sides, because sometimes you can accidentally have it a little bit crooked like that, and then it's not going to be quite perfect. So we just measure both sides, and then when we're happy, I will just pop some pins in to keep it in place. And then I'm going to do exactly the same on this side. So just fold it over, measuring 3.5 inches, and that was a little bit shy of 3.5 inches. So just checking it's 3.5 inches on both sides, and it is. So then I'll just pop a couple of pins in to keep it in place. Now we also want to make sure these edges are all nicely lined up. Now we're just going to sew around the entire edge. So now what I'm going to do is sew along the very edge, which will close up our opening as well as create our pouch. Now I'm using my left compensating foot, which is a special foot that has a spring in it that I can butt my fabric up against, and I'll get a perfect 1/8 inch seam allowance. And I'll put a link down in the description below if you'd like to check it out if you've got a Juki TL sewing machine. But if you don't, then don't worry. Just use a guide and work out your best guide for a 1/8 inch seam allowance. And if it needs to be a little bit more generous, that's okay too, but it does need to be smaller than a 1/4 inch seam allowance just so that we can close our opening. So I'll put my foot down. I'm stitching at stitch length 3 because it's a bit longer and more decorative. And I'm just not going to worry about a back stitch. I'm going to come back over the top and then do my back stitch. Now, when I come up to all these layers, I'm just going to just pause and just lift my foot up and make sure everything's sitting nicely and I'm catching all the layers, and then I'll carry on. And it is quite a few layers of fabric. My sewing machine can handle it, but if your sewing machine is maybe struggling a little bit, then just go slowly. Now when you're stitching with such a long stitch and it is decorative and we've got this corner here, I'm worried that if I keep going I'm going to come right off the edge. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to bring my stitch right down to about a 1 and then go forward maybe a couple of stitches. Then I'll bring it back up to 3, make sure my needle's down, lift up my foot and turn, and that looks about right, and then I'll carry on. Remembering to bring it back to the 3, and as I come up to my pins I'll just remove them. Bringing that stitch right down again. Just means I can be a little bit more precise. Bringing it back up to 3, lifting up my foot and turning. And I saw that this had moved over a little, so I'm just going to push it back so it's sitting where I want it to sit. Coming up to the next side, and I just want to again make sure it's all sitting nicely, so I'll lift up my foot and make sure that edge comes under my foot nicely. And right as I can see I'm about to stitch on it, lifting up my foot again, making sure it's sitting really nicely before I carry on. So coming right back to where I started, and this little bit of loose thread here, I'm going to pull it across because if I don't it could get caught up in my stitches and create a bit of a bird's nest. But then I'm going to stitch right over the top from where I started and then do a couple of stitches back. And then I'll cut my thread. And then what I'll do is just cut my loose thread. So now let's attach our snap. Now I forgot to say you'll need an awl, and it does come with your snap kit. And if you don't have one, they really are a great investment. I know that some of you that have purchased them are really happy with them and they're a lot of fun. So I hope you're going to enjoy another project where we use them. So what we're going to do first up is make sure our pouch is closed. So this is our lining and we're going to close it. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to find the center, and I'm just going to do that by eye. I'm going to take my snap, that's the round bit that will go on the top here, and just guess about where the center is, and then I want to place it just above the stitches, so it's going to sit above the stitches. And then just by eye, when I'm happy, I'm just going to push down, and that's going to be my marking of where I'll put my awl through the fabric. So now I've got my little mark there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure these edges are lined up nicely, these edges are lined up nicely, and then I'm going to pick it up. Well, actually, I should have just lined them up now. So now I've picked it up, I'm going to make sure all my edges are lined up nicely. I'm going to hold it firmly, and then I'm going to take my awl and find my little mark I did, and I'm going to poke it through all the layers, and I'm going to be super careful not to accidentally stab myself on the other side. I'm going to push that all the way through. Okay. So now what we do is we take the top snap and put that on the top there, and we push that through. And this can be a bit fiddly, but what we want to make sure is that all those layers are pushed down as far as they can be. And then we take the other side of the set, we take our pliers, and we just apply pressure, and you think you're going to hear a snap, but you don't because they're just plastic. But I am going to push down as hard as I can so it really sets in. It basically mushes the plastic. I don't know if mush is a word. And then I'm going to find the back or the other front. That's the opening, well, sorry, the inside. So I'm going to make sure it's shut again. Take the other good side and pop that through the hole that we made. And do exactly the same on this side. Okay, making sure that's all pushed through really nicely. Making sure I put that snap on the right way. And giving it a really good push. All right. And there we have our little pouch. Isn't that so cute? Let's fill it up. So the beauty of my pouch, or at least I think the beauty of my pouch, is that you can fit sanitary pads in it or tampons with applicators. So it fits 2 sanitary pads really comfortably on either side. So you could have 4 in there, or you can fit 2 pads in there as well as 4 tampons with applicators. And we just pop 2 on one side of the snap and 2 on the other side, and then we close it. And there we have it. Isn't that just so super handy and cute? And it's perfect for anyone because you can put either product in here. If you've liked this video, please do hit the like button, and even better, the subscribe button and the bell, which means you'll never miss out on another one of my videos, and I would really appreciate your support. If you're looking for more tutorials using snaps, I'll put a link up above for you. Thanks so much, and I'll see you in the next video.